Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about sexual reproduction. And in that today we are going to see about the sexual reproduction in plants. So first we will discuss about the sexual reproduction, what exactly it is. When we talk about the sexual reproduction, it always occurs with the help of two germ cells. When we talk about the germ cells are nothing but the gametes formed by the two organisms. Two organisms, when I am talking about, in that possibility is there, it may be a plant, it may be a animals. But important factors or the important part is there will be always a two germ cells if we are talking about the sexual reproduction. One will be a female gamete and other will be a male gamete. And the two main processes when we talk about the sexual reproduction, in that we have a two processes. One is a gamete formation and the another one is a fertilization. When we talk about the gamete formation, gametes are formed by the meiosis process. They are mentioned over here. Gametes are formed by a meiosis process. In a previous topics, in a previous videos, already we have discussed about cell division. And cell divisions are of two types, meiosis and the mitosis. In that, when we talk about the meiosis is a process of a cell division in which it's divide and the number of chromosomes becomes a half of the original. And generally when we talk about the chromosomes in the cell, they are present in a pair. Like if I am talking about the one of the cell, then 2n is the number of chromosomes in the parent. And if it is going under the process called as a meiosis, then the two new cells will be formed with the number of chromosomes as a n. So this will be a number of chromosomes in the daughter cells after the meiosis process or the meiosis type of a cell division. So when we talk about the gamete formation, in a gamete formation, the diploid cell going under the process called as a meiosis and forming a haploid gametes, which also we call as a germ cell. And the next process when we talk about in a sexual reproduction, the another important process is a fertilization. Now fertilization is nothing but the formation of the diploid zygote. Diploid zygote means what? Previously just now we have seen that haploid gametes are formed. Haploid gametes are formed. So one is a male gamete and one is a female gamete. The fertilization process is a combination of these two. These two are combining and again forming a 2n number of chromosomes. Fertilization process is nothing but what? When this haploid germ cells or the gametes are reuniting, they are combining with each other and again they are forming a 2n number of chromosomes, which is called as a diploid, and the name for this as a zygote. The name for that diploid first cell of life, we can call it, it's nothing but the zygote. This zygote divides by mitosis. The first germ cell, formation of a germ cell, meiosis process. And then when after the formation of a diploid zygote, this first cell zygote goes under the multiple mitosis and embryo is formed. After that multiple mitosis, that whatever is forming is called as the embryo. The embryo develops to form a new individual. So this two process, the important process what we have in the sexual reproduction, The first one is nothing but the formation of the gametes, and then the fertilization process. And remember the name, important name, that is a zygote. So in this sexual reproduction, when we talk about, the two parents are needed, or the two parents are involved in this type of a reproduction. When we studied in a previous part of this chapter, there we said about the asexual reproduction, and that was the uniparental, because only the one parent is sufficient for the reproduction. But here in this particular case, when we are talking about the sexual reproduction, there two parents are involved, or two parents are needed for the reproduction. The fusion of a male and a female gamete is only producing the zygote. And the next part, when we talk about this particular, is a diversity in living organism occurs due to genetic variation. If you remember in a previous part when we were discussing about the asexual reproduction, the variation was zero, because the new organism which is formed is exactly same as the parent organism. And that's why when we talk about the sexual reproduction, it brings the variation, because the two parents are involved. Their two different genetic characters are recombining and forming a new genetic character, and that brings the variation in the new organism. Species will be same, only the characters, some of the characters will be different. Now next we are moving ahead, and we will discuss about the sexual reproduction in the plants. When we talk about the sexual reproduction in the plants, the flower is a main part of the reproduction. Flower is a structural unit of a sexual reproduction. The proper scientific words, if we use, it is nothing but what? The flower is structural unit of a sexual reproduction in the plants. It consists of a four floral whorls. It consists of a four floral whorls named as a calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium, in which this androecium and gynoecium are the reproductive organs, or the reproductive whorls, whereas calyx and corolla are the just part of the flower. They are having their own specific characters and the specific use in the flower, but when we are talking about the sexual reproduction, then the major focus will be on the androecium and gynoecium. Now, this all the four whorls what we are having, that is the calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. They are arranged in a sequence from outside to inside. I am just taking to this particular picture, and then we will discuss about this. We are having a calyx at the outer part, the outer, that green color. When we are having a bud structure, in the bud structure, the outer green part is nothing but the calyx, or also we call it as a sepals. When after that we have the most important part of the flower, which we call as a petals in a general language, and the scientific word is a corolla, which is nothing but the attractive part of the flower, which attracts the insects towards it for the process called as the transfer of the male gametes or the female gametes. That we will see later on the later stage of it. And then the androecium and gynoecium. When we talk about the androecium, androecium is nothing but the male reproductive organ of the flower, and it consists of the members of the androecium is the anther filament. Anther and filament, you can see here the structure, this structure, this is nothing but the filament, and at the top we have the anther. On the gynoecium, if we are talking about, we have a three parts: stigma, style, and ovary. The base of it, the bulging rugby ball like structure, is nothing but the ovary. Then the long stalk like structure is nothing but the style, and at the top is a stigma. Stigma is a sticky material which helps to get pollen grain to stick on it, and for the further process that we will discuss in the later part. Now, when this two, gynoecium and the androecium, when we talk about this two, gynoecium and the androecium, if both are present in the same flower, the flower is called as a bisexual flower. If both are present in a same flower, it will be called as a bisexual flower. And if any one of this is present, whether androecium or gynoecium, then that will be called as a unisexual flower. It will be called as a unisexual flower. Here the picture they have shown is about the papaya flower. You can see here this particular flower, the male flower, only the male organ is present. And when we talk about the female flower, you can see here the stigma is visible and the ovary is at the down of it. And that's why this is called as the female flower. In this only the gynoecium is present and in this only androecium is present. So these are the nothing but the example of the unicellular or the sorry not unicellular, it is called as a unisexual flowers. Further part, when we talk about the many flowers have a stalk for the support. Many flowers are having a stalk for the support and we call it as a pedicle. And such flowers are called as a pedicellate, whereas flower without stalk is called as a sessile. Another one, when we talk about the androecium, is a male whorl and its members are called as stamens. And whereas the gynoecium is a female whorl and its members are called as carpels. Its members are called as carpels. They have given a word over here as a membrane. It's not membrane, it is a members. Further part, members of a gynoecium are called as carpels. These may be separate or united. Means they can be separate or they can be united. Some flowers, like if you will see the flower of hibiscus, in that is nothing but the bisexual flower. In that, if you will see, the stigma is at the center and the anthers are on the side. Further part, when we talk about the pollen grains from the anther are transferred on the stigma. The process of transfer of this is called as the pollination. The pollen grain which is produced in the anther, and of course the pollen grains are the male germ cells. That's why they will be a haploid, and when they are transferred on the stigma, that is on the female reproductive organ, that process is called as a pollination. Pollination occurs with the help of a abiotic agent and biotic agent, both it is possible. If you remember, I was talking about in a previous part with the picture that pollination or the transfer of the male gamete. In that, I use the word the attractiveness of the petals or the corolla. They attracts the insect for the pollination, because when the insect, simple example I am taking as a butterfly. If the butterfly sits on the flower, then on the feet or on the in the legs of that butterfly, that particular pollen grain gets stick, and when the butterfly flies and goes on the some other flower, then that germ cell or the pollen grain transfers from the male flower to the female flower. So by that is also the pollination is possible. It's just example as a butterfly I had taken. It may be some other bird, some other insect. Another possibility is by wind or by the water. When we are pouring a water on the some flower, then there is a possibility that a pollen grain may transfer from male organism to the female organism. So this particular process is called as a pollination. Now, after the pollination, when the pollen grain reaches at the stigma, then what happened? It starts to produce a pollen tube. You can see in the next picture, the pollen tube starts to germinate and it reaches up to the ovary and up to the ovules, and the germ cell which is present inside that pollen grain goes inside and unites with the female gamete. And after that, what happens? The polar nucleus forms and the egg cell, they are just getting under the process called as a fertilization. And after the fertilization, that ovary what we are having gets converted into a fruit, and the ovule gets converted into a seed. Here they have given about the when pollination involves only one flower or two flowers born on same plant, it is called as a self-pollination. When the two different flowers are germinating on the same plant and the pollination is taking place between themselves, it's called as a self-pollination. Whereas if it involves two flowers born on two plants of a same species, it is cross-pollination. While discovering the new high-yielding and resistant varieties of a plant, scientists bring about the pollination with the help of a brush. Next part they have given over here is about the seed germination. Seed germination, which already in a lower standard we have discussed, I'm just taking it over here. Ovule develops into seed and ovary into fruit after fertilization. That already just now I said. Seed fall upon the ground when fruit breaks up and they germinate in the soil under favorable conditions. And the zygote develops at the cost of a food stored in endosperm of seed, and thus a new plant is formed. This is called as seed germination. That seed germination in a lower standard already you have studied. No need to discuss that in a lot detail. Only the radicle and the plumule that you know very well. Plumule converts into the plant and the radicle converts into the roots. So this is about the sexual reproduction in the plant. In the next section, we will talk about the sexual reproduction in human beings.